Gregoire.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for taking the time to come see us. I think this is going to be pretty informal. I think we did this last year, and everybody thought it worked. Where I'll stand here and try to answer your questions the best that I can. I just came from the financial analysts, and they ask really, really tough questions, so you guys have to be easy on me. Steve.
We're passing a mic to him.
Steve Wexler, IT Trends and Analysis. Interested in how digitalization DT has impacted how you operate CA, and the follow-on would be, what was the biggest issue or challenge that you faced trying to gear up for?
Sure. Well, first of all, it affects, if we are a software company, it affects everything you do. The products we build, first of all, have got to fit into a digital transformation story. At the end of the day, the notion that you're going to trade a compact disc full of software, charge someone for it when all they've seen is a PowerPoint demo, and get paid maintenance on that transaction in perpetuity, that's a dead business model. So for us, digital transformation means we have to get products that are easy to use, easy to install, low cost of ownership, and that is the beginning of our digital transformation. Now, what do those products do? What those products do is they have to help customers with their digital transformation. So when you're thinking of release management, every company becoming a software company and putting up 4, 5, 6 net new releases a week, you can't do that in a manual way. You've got to be able to do that in a digitized way where someone writes the code and we back it up. You come up with the idea to write the code, use our product and portfolio management system to put the project together, figure out the resources and the cost. You go from that to using our Agile Central and a completely digital Agile experience where all of your Scrum teams are using an electronic system to hold on to all of their artifacts. You move from there to writing code. You write the code and then you're in unit test. Test in a digital way, move that code from unit test to integration test to performance test, and finally into production. You want to have that as digitized as possible. And as every company starts thinking through their digital evolution, it's going to, there's no way around it. You're going to go through that process. To the extent that you can make that process as seamless and as easy and as quick as possible, I think that those are the kinds of products in the target markets that we're looking for that customers want. Secondly, is how do you run the business? When you take a look at our go-to-market, it's completely changed. Once again, the notion that you're going to have a sales professional that cold calls a customer that has no relationship with you, doesn't know who you are, you're going to try to get an appointment with them and go through that process. That's a dead sales process as well. People who buy technology, you're going to want to try and buy. They're already on your website, which means that digital experience has got to be phenomenal. They have to be able to download your product or at least test your product in their environment in some way or somehow and understand. And you have to have all of the metrics running through your digital pipeline where you're understanding how that customer is using your system and who is the buyer and what are their preferences. And at the point that that nurtures, then you start bringing in a sales professional. Now, we run all of that completely digital. That's a completely automated digital process, so it's almost seamless going from marketing to sales. The biggest problem we have is cultural. People in general like doing it the way they used to do it. And to the extent that they're willing to change and understand that there is a better way of doing things, that's something that I think is a leadership issue. And you have to convince people that their lot in life and their ability to do their job and eventually get rewarded for doing that job is better if they follow this digital change transformation.
Benjamin Guerre from L'Informaticien, an IT Pro B2B magazine in France. My question will be a kind of a follow-up of this one. today with this digital transformation, you have also to change the message of the people you're speaking to, from IT people or purely mainframe guys to more business people. What is your plan? How you will manage to tackle this challenge, to speak to business people and no more IT people?
Well, it's a great question. Your question is very timely. I'm seeing a very dramatic shift, once again, from a command and control management style that has been inherent in most of our companies for as long as we can remember, to something that's much more open. I call it principle-centered leadership, where I know the right thing to do and I have the autonomy to do the right thing. And when you're dealing with those types of professionals, they're usually on the business side, or they have a broader general manager experience under an umbrella of a large corporation. Most decisions are trying to push down so they're as close as possible to where the economic output is going to be. And those people now could never, or now have an opportunity to tap into what's called a capital budget. And they don't have, an operating budget. They're given, the budget to go run their business. And with the cloud and SaaS, they can buy subscriptions on a monthly and annual basis instead of a capital budget where they used to see a system that they liked or a piece of software that they liked, and they'd have to go procure a server, an operating system, a database, install the server, get staff that is a DBA, get staff that understands operating systems, get a network administrator. They could never do that. But now, with technology liberating their ability to take the idea they have and solve the problem they want and take advantage of the cloud and SaaS, it's just a lot cleaner. Now, how do you find those people? This is where you have to have a digital marketing experience, because those folks, or the people that report to that general manager, when they're looking for solutions, they're not picking up the phone. They're going on the web. They're doing a Google search. They're doing a Yahoo search. They're doing a Bing search. They're going to a number of your digital print, your digital media to find out what you guys think is out there. And when they see that, they're clicking on the links and trying the software and trying to have an experience where they get a better understanding of that particular solution for their particular environment. Now, if you're blind to that and you don't know that customers or potential customers are looking at your solutions, I think you miss out on an incredible opportunity. So I think it's a combination of using science and using modern marketing techniques, coupled with getting your message out there in a very clean and crisp way that is easily digestible, and then paying attention to all the different media that you have to get your message out.
Hi, my name is Renato Cruz. I write to InovaJor in Brazil. In your presentation, you talked about this emerging interface that is voice. In your opinion, what will be the role of apps in this new voice-centric environment?
Well, I think it's, first of all, we're already seeing it with, you have Siri. If you bought a new car in the last year, most of your interface with the car is now voice controlled. And as we start getting more machine learning and more artificial intelligence into the user interface experience, not only are you going to be able to communicate your wants and needs directly, you're going to get the anticipated wants and needs based on your previous history. So I think that we are just right at the cusp of that next new generation of ease of use, user centricity, and a much more seamless and easy way to interact with complex systems. Yeah, I can't stress this enough. The role of a company like ours is to make technology easy. And what is easier than using natural language to express what you want to get done? So we're experimenting with those types of user interfaces, but I think that technology is getting to be very, very, very pervasive and very, very strong.
David Norfolk, Law Research. I'm told that the vast majority of people are still doing manual testing, which is no testing at all in my book. In a world when that may be true, is there a danger that making these technologies easy to use but have people adopting agile processes superficially, but not measure the impact on the end user, the business user experience, and end up delivering faster and faster software that doesn't quite do what the customer wants.
I think there's a definitely a probability that that does happen, but I think it is very self-correcting. You know, we did some research, I can't remember the source, but Darlene will get it to you if you're interested, if this is just on the mobile space, if you go to use a mobile app and it takes you 6 seconds to load, 50% of the people that were going to use that application will abandon it and abandon it for life. So just think about the economics of that. You spend all of this time, energy, and effort to get a customer to want to use your application, whether it's for free or whether it's for fee. And because you haven't thought through the user environment and the commitment you have to that customer, you've abandoned them for life. I mean, that's just crazy. So I think that people who are generally serious about their business performance are going to follow Agile and not in a superficial way. And I think as they're building applications, they're going to get much more rigorous in testing. Now, in the larger companies, there's just been so many disasters that are very, very hard to unwind, of large-scale systems that went out that didn't get tested, that it is a topic that senior executives, and even at the board level, when you're putting out major releases, they want to understand how you test it. You know, the one here in the U.S. that we see that happened 2 years ago was the output of the healthcare exchange with the U.S. federal government, how they put that application together. They didn't do enough testing, put it out to the public, it failed. Very embarrassing for all parties associated with it, and it was completely avoidable. You know, they just didn't do exactly what you said, a superficial testing that didn't have a rigorous path going from a unit test to an integration test to a system test to a performance test. And we've done that path since, you know, the beginning of software. That's how you should do it. Automating it gives you a higher probability that you're going to get it right. And when you think about how fast we're going, you can't do it manual. There's just no way. You'll never get your release out. You will be uncompetitive. You have to digitize that process.
Margot Visitation with Forrester Research. I want to go back to the first thread, the first themes that we were talking about. And the question that I have is, how does a company like CA compete in an increasingly self-service market where you can get enterprise-level functionality and capability for, you know, very low cost, and you can buy it with your credit card, and then it begins to grow virally in your organization? How does this change your pricing models, or how does this change your go-to-market strategy?
Depending on the product, we sell like that. You're going to see Waffle tomorrow. I think we have 200,000 users. Low price point. Important, very focused system. Very well controlled in an open source environment. We just bought an open source testing platform called BlazeMeter. Low ASP, and by user, you get to download it and test it, built completely on open source. And as you start scaling it to an enterprise class, there's definitely opportunities for it to hit the target margins that we're looking for. But we're adding an awful lot of engineering and an awful lot of support and service in and around that. So I think when you are using these technologies, they have to be mission purpose for the economics of the problem that you're solving. Now, some of our technology is extraordinarily sophisticated and has the highest throughput tolerances, and you're going to get paid more for a solution of that level of sophistication than a solution that is more widespread, solving smaller problems. So it really depends on which way you go. But I think if you're not paying attention to what you brought up, I think you are a software company that's going to really struggle to be in business.
I am Marina from Brazil. I work at Valor Econômico, financial newspaper. Mike, in your speech you talked about disruption, software revolution. Are companies in emerging markets prepared for this revolution, or this process could increase the distance between rich and poor countries?
That's a great question. That hasn't been the case. If you take a look at, take a look at India, for example. India has skipped a whole generation of technology and went directly into mobile. And I think if you take a look at the GDP of India, it's growing very, it's definitely not as wealthy a country as perhaps, Germany, France, the US, the UK. But when you take a look at their GDP growth, they're doing very, very well. I think that having visionary, smart technologists and business leaders is not limited to countries that have an awful lot of wealth. And I think that companies that really aspire to get into that whole digital medium, they can skip, generations of older, antiquated technology and improve the situation, their business performance, by really thinking through how do they digitize their businesses.
It's Moral Grim from Revue du Digital in Paris, France. I would like to know that the prospective studies say that we're shifting from a centric model to a distributed model. That means that the data is global, but the computation is local. Each service takes what he needs from the data and analyzes it and uses it the way his business, his part of the business needs it. How this future trend will impact your business and your way of developing applications?
Well, we're in the business of actually making that happen. One of our best-selling products is API management, secure API management. And the whole thesis of that particular software is to take data from multiple different disparate sources and be able to serve that up onto a platform that a user wants. Most of the time, that platform is going to be a mobile device, whether it be a tablet or a smartphone. And to our extent, the more heterogeneous and the more disparate the processing, the better it is for CA, because that's complicated. And our job is to take the complexity out of that. But if you want to have a truly robust system where you're taking multiple disparate data sources together, making that easy for a customer to serve up that data in a secure way, I think is a great business for us to be in.
Randy Hefner, Forrester Research. And a good segue, because I'll be on API management as well. It was clear from your commercials that you guys see APIs as critical for the future of dating. But what I'm wondering is how you would see APIs transforming CA's own business over the next 5 or 10 years.
Well, we've been able to do that with, we have, one of the blessings and curses of a company that's been around for a long time is we have a lot of solutions. And, I did this every quarter. I have a town hall, we video it live and stream it to all of our offices. And I put up our scorecard of the objectives of the year, red, green, yellow. And before I did that, a theme that I was trying to drive home is kind of getting to your point, is customer expectations are never satisfied. They want more. So they have one product that works well, and the adjacent product we have has a different look and feel, has a different operating system, different way of working. They're going to be disappointed. That's not what they want. The beauty of the APIs is we can abstract a lot of that. Coupled with that, the beauty with our cloud solutions, we can do all of that knitting behind the scenes. So if we have multiple cloud solutions that are on different databases, we can, through our own engineering, we can abstract that so what the customer sees for their solutions, a very tight user interface that's bringing solutions together. A great example of that is take a look at APM, our APM solution, and our UIX. What's the difference? Why would you buy one or the other? Well, they work together. So if I have an application and that application is starting to consume resources, I can automatically communicate that to the UIM solution, which would go ahead and start up another set of servers, or allocate more virtual memory, or go ahead and free up disk space. To my knowledge, I think we're the only company that has a solution broad enough to do that. But that's what customers want. If they buy that APM solution, they're going to be looking at ways of monitoring their infrastructure. How can we make the two of those things work together? Now, both of those products were developed at a different time, on different platforms, and the last thing in the world a customer wants to do is do that integration work, so we have to do it. And if we do that, make it seamless, you do have higher differentiation. Now, we haven't done that for all of our portfolio, but the concept and looking for places to do that, we look at that all the time because I do think that's what differentiates us from a point product, is you can really think through the whole enterprise.
And the follow-up specifically on your API management solution is that in an API economy, API management, as opposed to CA's history as an infrastructure software company, a dev tooling software company, API management really is a business solution. How do you think about it and plan for that and skill up for really meeting that value point of API management?
We call that shift left. We have to shift left up the value stream. At the end of the day, if you listen to my speech today, a lot of that has a lot to do with us as well. You want to build a company that lasts, you better build that company to change. And one of the things that it just is what it is. Technology commoditizes really quickly. And so if you don't have your eye on the ball of moving up the value stream, because whatever you're building today is going to get commoditized. And so you want to be high enough up the value chain that differentiates you from commodity-oriented services. So for us, we have to get closer to the developer because the developer is making decisions consciously and unconsciously on what the infrastructure looks like. And with us, one of the beauties of CA is we're heterogeneous, we don't care. You want to be in Amazon, knock yourself out. You want to be in Azure, knock yourself out. You want to put a cluster of Linux servers together, that's fine. You want to run on a mainframe? We don't care. But what we know what we have to do is we have to get closer where that decision is made so that we participate in that decision-making process and make that end user make their job a lot easier.
Matt McCarthy, Integration Developer News. I wanted to just get your take on how you can realize benefits from your theme about built to change. It's one thing to put a lot of these components in place that let you have a digital transformation and you can do it at your own speed and all that thing. But there are a lot of people that have API management now that would never have invented or never knew how to invent Uber. I mean, there are just gaps in understanding the principles, implementing them, getting them to work the way your customer needs to. Does CA see a role in filling in that kind of innovation gap where there are some blueprints or other things to help people put all these things together?
Absolutely. If you take a look at Uber, the fundamental idea there is the concept of a shared economy. And if you take a look at Airbnb, very similar thing. It's a shared economy. Resources that are stagnant, that are owned by one person, that are highly underutilized. So if you take a look at all the things that fit that mold, you're going to see a lot of different sharing economies go on. But if you do take a look at Uber, they're one of the heaviest users of APIs. They go from a mobile app, and they're able to hit geodata, they're able to hit a billing system, they're able to hit an HR system that holds all of the driver information and the history of that driver information. They're able to serve up analytics, and all that is done through APIs in a shared infrastructure of all things. So to the extent that there's companies looking to do those types of things, we have a lot of solutions that solve that particular problem. Inside the company itself, this company that's built to change, this is something that I think is extraordinarily important because it's more cultural than it is business related. To the extent that you've done something, you've done it well, having this self-awareness that nobody cares, it's very painful. And you have to be able to stop, pause, and examine yourself and your economic well-being in the context of what others think. And by the way, with all the social media we have and all the feedback loops we have, you should be able to tell what other people think of your solution. And not only the solution you currently have, the solution that they want. And the whole metaphor for built to change is to open up your aperture, pay attention, be a good listener. And if you do that, I think you're going to have an incredible amount of creativity. If you fail to do that and get stuck in stagnant solutions with stagnant processes, I think you suffer the fate of every company that didn't adapt to the landscape in which they operate. Now, to make it a little bit more complicated, I use the term the fourth industrial revolution. So it's the fourth one. What happened in the other three? The same thing's going to happen. The difference is it's going to happen very quickly. Like if you take a look at my parents, as they went through the last industrial revolution, they had their whole lifetime to see it go from start to end. In this fourth industrial revolution, it's going to happen in 7 to 10 years. And then there's going to be a new one. There's a video, I'm not sure, Darwin, it's up on the web. We did a project with The Economist, and we did a video movie, 19 minutes or so. And it walks you through the fourth industrial revolution. We presented it at Davos last year. And if you have time to watch that video, it really walks through this problem space and how innovation happens and how quickly society is adapting to the pace of change that is happening with respect to technology. And it was no mistake when I talked about OpenAI in my keynote today that I put that paragraph in there of what OpenAI is doing. They're not just solving the technology problems. They understand that AI technology, we're all going to love to use our voice to get what we want, but as we start teaching machines to think, there's going to be incredible moral and philosophical issues that you're going to have to address. And I think what's unique about OpenAI, they're attacking these at the same time they're attacking the technology. So I think you're going to see an awful lot happening. But one of the things for sure you're going to have to pay attention to is software is going to be a big part of it. And number two, if you are not willing to adapt, you'll suffer the fate of every generation that just refused to understand the new generation that's coming. And my message to our customers was, let's get on this. We're here to help with you. We're going through it ourselves. Let's just have open discussion, open dialogue, learn from each other. It's hard, it's not easy, but we're going to be there for you. And I think in the process, especially with how we do Agile, bringing our customers into our scrums, I think we're going to learn a lot in the process.
Hi, Alex Gregoire from ITwire.com in Australia. I was fascinated to hear astronaut Captain Stuart Kelly talk about himself having a twin and how his twin's telomeres are longer than Captain Stewart's because he was in space for a long time. And I was just wondering, it's a bit of a silly question, if there's anything that CA can do to help figure out how to maybe transplant some of those longer telomeres into Captain Stewart so we could be keynoting at CA conventions for many more years to come.
He was great today, wasn't he?
He was.
I mean, it was just, I gotta tell you, one of the interesting parts of my job is I get to meet a lot of interesting people. And one of the other frightening parts of my job is, boy, did I ever feel small up on stage with the super accomplished people. But we had a great dialogue before we went on stage, and we talked 2 times beforehand. Every time I talk to all of them, I feel I learn a ton from each and every one of them. They have great life experiences, very strongly opinionated, as you would well imagine, and very, very bright and forward-thinking and positive. So it's just really fun to be around people like that. I was just really happy to share that with all of you.
Sure. And are you doing anything with, Bert Rutan or any of the other space, private space exploration initiatives to get CA's technologies, as part of those forward-thinking and the revolutionary endeavors?
We have a number of contracts with government agencies and some of the primes that we work with, doing some of that work, but nothing specific with those particular individuals.
Linda Blue from IDC. I really loved it this morning when you talked about the need to go back to philosophy and coordinating that with this concept of how AI evolves and how we think about humanizing the human aspect of AI with machines. That was really interesting. Taking AI into the context of your portfolio products, I wonder if you could talk briefly about how you see that providing, contextualizing how the data is leveraged by organizations, whether it's from PPM, whether it's from ALM, or wherever it's coming from on the ITSM summit, to enable a different kind of strategization and adaptability to to agile processes to enable success for businesses?
The first place that we've been able to do that, you can see it out on the floor, is with APM and the AXA product that we just launched here. And that's really, there's evolution to all this. It starts with, the whole concept of data analytics. And then you're moving from data analytics to some learnings and our correlation engine, which is mapping things that we see in an infrastructure or an application that aren't right, and mapping that to what we think you should do. That's the first part of an AI solution for a company like CA. The next generation will be to take that correlation engine, make it more robust, extend it outside multiple products so you have a better view of your enterprise. We are a few years away from making that happen, but there's a lot of work that we're doing with all of those technologies to make them more pervasive so they get into more of the commercial-oriented systems. But the whole idea, it starts with collecting lots and lots of data and this concept of correlation engine awareness. If you are a student of AI, there's basically 5 schools of AI, of how you approach it. None of them agree, of course. But each type of school, or like symbolism, for example, takes one particular approach to how you do AI as right as possible. And you're really looking at different algorithms to try to get the highest probability of success of the machine coming to the right conclusion with unstable data. Lots of work for us in that, for all of us in that particular category.
And it's really interesting also to see what others are doing in this area, whether you're looking at IBM or what Microsoft's beginning to do, or we're seeing this evolving at HPE, I should say Micro Focus, with regards to the Haven on Demand. So as a former philosophy and music double major, I'm really happy to see this come before.
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that I think is interesting. My undergrad degree was in physics, and so I wouldn't know who Adam Smith was if you put a gun to my head. And when you start taking a look at true computer science and you bring artificial intelligence into it, you can't read and get anywhere without bumping into some of these great philosophers. And the thing that I like the most about that is it takes what used to be a very geeky-oriented practice where you either came out of engineering or one of the sciences, and you had this certain type of stereotype, and you broaden the field to bring different thinking. And I think it's going to be more creative, and I think it's going to solve another problem our industry has. If you take a look at, I do an awful lot of work in STEM, and I do a lot of work in particular with trying to get minorities and gender diversification into STEM. The fact of the matter is we're losing that battle. You take a look at the number of students that go into 4-year degrees for engineering that are female, it's decreased over the last couple of years. That's not good. That's wiping out a whole portion of the population that could add to the creativity of our industry. Now, if you take a look at some of the liberal arts and some of the humanities, overpopulation of diversity, if they can get into the technical world, I think that they're going to see that it's not that hard. And your contribution to thinking through the creativity of solutions, it's not about sitting at a keyboard and pounding out Java code all day long. There's all kinds of ways you can participate. And I think if we can open up that aperture, I think we come up with more creative solutions. We make the industry more diversified. We have more creativity. And I can't see that not being good for all of us. So we're looking at those types of players, and we think that they are going to add to CA. I think they're going to add to the industry. So if you want to talk to Otto and put a lean canvas together of a solution you have, he's accepting resumes.
Gartner, as well as what was mentioned, the trend of SaaS services coming into the market and providing point solutions. Another big trend, of course, is open source, and putting together systems like, let's say, DevOps tool chains involves assembling together a number of different open source products. We've seen Microsoft transform themselves to some degree as well with embracing open source. So I just wondered what was your position on that and open source in general in CA?
You know, open source is a tool. We use it. We use it internally, and we also use it in solutions that we build and solutions that we sell. I think that it's a fantastic tool used appropriately, can drive a great deal of economic value for us and a great deal of economic value for our customers. The issue with open source is it ready for prime time? Definitely. There's lots and lots of open source that's ready for prime time. And if it's not ready for prime time, that gives an opportunity for other people to take it and move it into prime time. Now, there's very few companies that have been able to get any kind of scale with only an open source business model. You know, I was at a 3-hour lecture on Friday afternoon in New York with the Veterans Day Parade and Trump protesters, and it was just an absolute zoo. And here I am sitting in a technical lecture on Bitcoin and blockchain. And the open source blockchain, there's a company based out of San Francisco that starts to probably got the most amount of transaction. Visa's using them, a couple of the banks are using it. But they've already forked the open source code. So one of the things that I would encourage people to do with open source is, first of all, yeah, absolutely, go ahead and use it. You should understand it. But be very careful when someone says they're open source and how much proprietary technology is built into that open source solution, because I think you can get surprised.
Hi, Mike. Tim Greaser from IDC. So I've been to a few CA worlds, and I noticed a lot of transformation as evidenced in what we see in CA. So my question is, how do you see CA today, and how would you like it to be seen 5 years from now?
Well, I think we are in a unique situation because we're a very unique company, where we have an opportunity to truly be a great and meaningful software company over time. And it really depends on our ability to embrace some of the things I talked about this morning. Are we building ourselves to change? Do we understand that customers want to buy in a different way? Do we understand that technologies that used to be pervasive 5 years ago are not pervasive anymore, and there's a whole new set of technologies. So I think that we are in our evolution. I don't think it ever stops. In 5 years from now, when you think through the businesses that we operate in, I'd like you to think about CA. I'd like you to say, that's a great software company. That's a great company that builds great software. Not a company that buys companies, a company that builds great software. That we are a great organic engineering company. That would make me feel really, really good, and make me feel like we've, as a team, really achieved something meaningful. Because at the end of the day, I think it's really based on what have you done organically? Have you built great software?
Yeah, I think, my observation, the reality of where CA is today is ahead of the perception that CA has in the general industry. Good luck in making that transformation.
Well, that's Darla's job. She's responsible for communications here, so she's got to get the message out. But we feel pretty good about our progress. The notion of getting close to customers and getting close to Agile and having these customer testimonials, like I hope you notice when you're walking through the halls, you see these testimonials. We've picked up our compete level. We want to talk about our company. We think we are doing some really interesting things, but we want our customers to talk about us rather than us be the ones putting the message up. We think it means a lot more. And 3 years ago, I couldn't get a company like CNN to be on stage with me at CA World. I couldn't get a company like Under Armour. I couldn't get a company like Domino's. These are great companies doing really, really interesting things, and they can choose any partner they want, but they've chosen us. And we did a really good job, and in return, they're saying, yeah, you did a really good job. I'll help you talk about this. And that unto itself, I think, is a testimony that we're moving in the right direction. But it's really about organic software development of building products that matter, that delight customers.
Richard Lett, freelancing from the German magazines Car IT and Automotive IT. Behind you on the screen, I see probably a connected car. I'd like to know what activities you do in this field and what the perspectives are, and if you also help to make it secure.
Sure. Definitely on the security part, we do a lot of work with not just General Motors, who I think is on the floor, but also with Mercedes-Benz and BMW. And one of the things that's unique about our API is a secure API. And if you are building a car and you have a general processor in the car now, which means you are putting applications in the car, but really you got to open up the system. You can't have a closed system. So what happens if you have a third party developing software that's going into the car and it affects the anti-lock brakes, for example? You want to make sure that every single piece of software that goes into that vehicle, you know where it came from, you know the version it's on, you know who the author is, you know that it's protected. And if that car is communicating with outside systems, that's where the security API comes into play. You want to make sure you know exactly what car it is, who are they talking to, what data is going back and forth. And I think that that's a great use case. And the engineering and the new thinking going into automotive is truly fascinating. I was actually at the Mercedes-Benz plant about a year ago, and I was shocked at the innovation going on, all built for the car. And they've really thought through what's that car look like. It's kind of odd. If you're an engineer, one of the most prestigious jobs you have at a car company is designing what the car looks like. That job, you want to talk about adaptability and build to change? The most important thing about a car, when it's a driverless car, is not going to be what it looks like on the outside. What's it like on the inside? Because now you're not driving. What are you going to be doing? You're going to want to be entertained. You're going to want to be productive. You're going to want to be comfortable. So the interior of a car, becomes one of the most important aspects of an automobile. And inside that car, trust me, there's going to be a lot of technology. So we're pretty excited about a lot of the new things happening in automotive.
I have a fabulous, Alex Harvarding it from Angela. I have a fabulous generic question that I got from Ashton Kutcher when he came to Australia and gave a talk. And he suggested that a great question was, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received to help you get where you are today?
Oh my goodness.
That's what people normally say when I ask that question. But they think of something.
How about be happy?
Be happy or be happy?
Be happy. Okay. Be happy.
Adam Shepherd, IT Pro, Club Pro and Channel Pro. You mentioned kind of digital transformation and particularly stuff around voice control and new emerging interaction models. But do you think that the IT industry is in danger of running away with new innovations like voice control and AI and VR before kind of the rest of the business sectors have caught up with things like agility and DevOps and these new business practices?
We will for sure do that. Guaranteed we will. I mean, I've been in this business for 28 years. I was talking about AI 20 years ago. We've been talking about virtual reality. I mean, I used to work in a lab, and we had the first generation of virtual reality technology in the lab, and this is, 22 years ago. So we tend to overhype technology and new ideas, and then get massively surprised when it hits mainstream. And I think that's what's going to happen with AI. AI was a big deal, 15, 20 years ago, and it's just, as the computing power has picked up, the amount of data, I mean, at the end of the day, if you're doing an AI solution, you need big data. They're tightly coupled together. And if you take a look at at some of the Hadoop interfaces where you can ingest large amounts of data, cheaper computing power, it puts you in a situation where you truly can get after some of these new techniques. Same with virtual reality. Virtual reality is highly dependent on processing speed and the quality of graphics and lens technology. You know, that technology is finally caught up to the imagination of what people want to be able to do with that technology. So we have an industry that cyclically does that, but eventually we get it right. Eventually we get it right.
In that same context, there's a way in which lifecycle needs to change to support these emerging IoT and other environments for embedded. And there's also an aspect around quality and security to address the demands in these emerging environments. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how both microservices and embedded, how that changes what you do for your portfolio to address these emerging technology needs.
Well, it's a great question. I think the most important part of your question is security. And we are going to, in the next very short period of time, put hundreds of thousands of IP addresses out there of very small devices, but at the end of the day, it's an IP address. And just think of how most of the hacks happen in the world today. You have a user ID to a root system on any particular server in your company's network. We compromise you, get your ID, and because we know your ID and you're a privileged user, you are compromised and you go hit all of the other servers, eventually trying to get to the server you really want, where all the data is. Well, what happens when you have in your home your Mac or your stack of computers that are managing your house? You know, everybody has a server, and you have all of your files, your banking files, your personal files, and you buy this new fancy fridge that's got an IP address in it, and you think it's really cool because from your iPhone you can, you know, take a look inside your fridge and understand how much milk you have and order the milk and then get it delivered. That all sounds cool. But what happens when someone compromises that fridge's IP address? Because they have the fridge's compromised identity, and you trust that fridge, and that fridge goes and allows a user to go get your personal files on your server. That has got to get tackled. And right now, I think a lot of work is being done to take the whole concept of what we do right now with privileged identity management for servers and start thinking about privileged identity management for IoT devices. Now, the gating factor on that is because you have an IP address, it means to the outside world, you just look like another computer. But getting the sophistication of the software to protect that particular device from the rest of the network, we still have work to do to make that happen. And I think you're going to see an awful lot of innovation happen in that particular department over the next little while.
Last question.
Hi, Joseph from France. What do you think about Google acquiring APG?
Apogee? Oh,
yes.
Google?
Not about the amount, about the stories.
I was pretty happy about it. They bought it for a special purpose. At the end of the day, first of all, Diane Green runs that business at Google, and she's brilliant. She is absolutely brilliant. And if anyone is going to help get Google into the enterprise, I think that she is a very, very credible engineer and an extraordinarily credible person to make that happen. Now, the reason why you'd buy that API technology and bring it into Google is you want to compete with AWS and Azure. So I think that they're going to be occupied with tailoring that particular set of technologies inside their main use case, which leaves some open competitive space for our use case, which is how do you help GM, how do you help Intel, how do you help all these other companies that have disparate technologies not on one localized platform. So I think that for us it was helpful, but it's a good company, it's a good technology. Google's a partner and a good company as well. I think that there's lots of market for all of us to plan, but I think in the short term, in the medium term, it gives us a little bit of a leg up on a broader TAM. Well, thank you all for taking the time to come to CA World. I can tell by some of the accents and the voices, many of you traveled very far to be with us. I want to thank you very much for being here. Please enjoy the floor and enjoy the show. And if we can be of any more service, Darlene and her team will do everything they can to get you anything that you